The growing penetration of technology has given a digital facelift to the governance and citizen services. Now, cutting down the need for queuing up outside government offices for even the basic services, technology has enabled citizens today to avail their services remotely, apply for documents, raise complaints or issues, grievances, and do a lot more beyond that. However, all of this is not as rosy as it sounds, for a simple reason, because the government and the public sector needs to modernize their existing legacy infrastructure and adopt cutting edge technologies to reach out to the grassroots and deliver seamlessly. Hi, I'm Adarsh Som from ETGovernment, and you're watching our Public Sector Leadership Series. So today in this episode, we'll talk about the digital transformation journey of government and public sector entities. We'll also talk about the role of AI and how it is helping in improving the citizen experience and service delivery. We'll also talk about the role of Kyndryl in helping governments modernize their existing IT infrastructure. To share more on the subject, I have with me an eminent guest today. He is Mr. Ashutosh Johri, the Director for PSU and Government Business at Kyndryl. Welcome, Mr. Johri, to this exclusive conversation with the ETGovernment. So firstly, I would like to know, since you've been servicing the governments a lot, so what do you see as some of the pressing challenges in the government and the public sector ecosystem?
So first of all, Adarsh, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure being here in the ET studio. I'll answer this question from my perspective. I mean, from Kyndryl's perspective. I think one of the most challenging things that any company that wants to do business with the government is the process that the government follows, the RFP process. And honestly, I'll tell you what the problem is. I don't think I have a solution for it. But if you look at the difference between the government sector and the private sector, then the private sector, they take their technology buying decisions more on the basis of, let's say, agility and the best techno-commercial fit for their requirement. For the government, because of who they are, they have to keep fairness and compliance, at the forefront. And sometimes, the best techno-commercial solution suffers because the government has decided to keep fairness upfront. So, and obviously this translates to, on the ground, it translates to that, you get the entire RFP with all the commercial terms and everything. You have to comply to that. You don't have option. You have only one chance to kind of submit a response, both technically and commercially. So, and a lot of times, we interact with the government where, they feel that they need a company like ours to kind of be the one supporting them going forward. But many times, unfortunately, it doesn't happen despite the wishes on both the sides. So that is a gap that is there. And that is something that I'm sure everybody else also feels. There are times that we've sometimes actually won some bids where, where probably, we submitted an over-aggressive response or something, and that makes the entire project kind of suffer a little bit, because we had to win that. So these kind of things happen. I don't know how the government can solve this problem. They have taken a lot of steps so while I'm mentioning the problem, let me also tell you how the government is trying to address this situation. So what they do a lot of times is that, they have this QCBS format of evaluation, which is a combination of the quality of the bid and the quality of the proposal and the commercial value of the proposal, where they give almost 70 to 80% weightage to the quality of the proposal and only 30% to the commercial value. So that has kind of addressed this to quite an extent. But still, that is one of the challenges, because a lot of times what happens is that an RFP runs for 6 months and options change in those 6 months. Technology has been growing very, very fast. New models come up, so those are things which are some challenges that you face while doing business with the government. Yeah, so that was what I feel are the challenges that you face.
So the bit that you shared with the quality and the the cost angle thing, that was a very interesting bit. This shows that the government and the public sector have started moving ahead from their earlier constraints. But as you mentioned that the RFP runs for about 6 months and the technology gets evolved highly during that time, as we see anything new in technology world coming just by the day. And do you think this particular issue has been sustaining amongst, I mean, across the government departments, or is it just a few sectors, just a few company government ministries where you feel this, and rest of the infrastructure is, or rest of the ecosystem is perfect?
No, honestly, I always give this example, which is an example that every citizen of the country can relate to. That we have potholes on the roads of the country, largely because those tenders are being run on a L1 basis. So the lowest bidder would win. And there was this joke I before Kyndryl, I used to work with a company in the telecom industry, and the telecom industry was building towers, to support the GSM network across the country. And there was a time when there was a market value of the cost of iron, okay, which was around 50 rupees, okay, and the cost of building a tower used to be 51 rupees. It is just not possible, right? So, but what was happening was that companies were coming and bidding, and they knew that okay, this is the expected bidding value, so they would bid. Now they will cheat, you know. So what they were mixing, whether they're putting thicker paint, I don't know, to measure the width of the iron bars put in the tower or not. But whatever it was, there was some cheating going on. But there was no way you could go with a vernier caliper across all the towers built and measure the width of all the bars. So it was not possible to catch them. But that's what was happening. So so this another example on the private sector side. But wherever you have a L1 based bidding, these scenarios exist. So they would be there across all the departments of the government. And but the good part, like you said at the start, was that the government is willing to make changes. They have made a lot of changes. QCBS has addressed some of these issues. Today you have a lot of mega projects that the government has done. So the digital public infrastructure piece, whether it's Aadhaar, whether it was the COVID certificate, whether it is your PAN cards, your digital tax filing. Now medical records are being digitized. Courts are becoming e-courts, so you can receive a summon and you don't have to travel. You can actually do a video conference with your digital identity proof of presence. So a lot of things are changing, and all these mega projects the government is running, all of them now have this QCBS criteria of selection, which kind of disqualifies non-serious bidders or people who would come up with substandard solutions. They get eliminated right at the start. So while the problem persists, there's not been a 100% solution, because the 100% solution would be the way the private sector approaches this thing, because they would interact with everybody and then finally make the selection, like I told you, on the basis of technology, agility, quality of service, and a techno-commercial balance. So till the government reaches there, I think it's going to be, some time. I don't know how they would do it, but are they willing to walk the steps in that direction? Absolutely. We're seeing that.
Yes, we've seen that. And also, just to add to that, I feel because of the multiple compliances that the government organizations has to keep up with, that is also one of the reasons why it slows down the process. But since the onset of digital, as you also mentioned, that they are willing to walk that step. So with the onset of digital adoption of better technologies, I guess the processes can be more streamlined, can be more easy to flow, and the turnaround time can also be reduced to significant value. So from there, I cue my next question, which basically is how Kyndryl is helping the government organizations or the public sector organizations to develop a digital equity and inclusion across their departments, across their sectors, and how are you enabling them to do so? Because the why the question of equity and inclusion is because there is a digital divide as well in the ministries, in the government space, in the public sector space. So I would like to know your thoughts on that.
So there are two parts of the question. I'll answer the second one first. I think the government has crossed the digital divide. Okay, so digital divide is reversed now. The technology that the government has built in the last few years is actually far more massive in its adoption, implementation than what the private sector has. Because if you look at, I gave you some examples of the DPI goods or digital public infrastructure projects the government has been running. I mean, there's no private sector player who has something as big as a PAN or a Aadhaar or a COVID vaccination certificate. Today you have DigiLocker. I can have my 10th certificate, 12th certificate, car driving license, so many things which I can put over there. So at least some departments of the government. But yes, there are some departments of the government which are still far behind. They're still using old technology, but by and large, if you equate the latest in the private sector versus the latest in the government has far exceeded. So that was the second part of your question that I answered first. The first part about how Kyndryl is helping them, I'll probably try and answer with two examples of live projects that we are doing. One of them, I'm not sure if we have the right to mention the names of our customers, in a public video forum like this. So I'll just say one of the three largest PSU banks in the country. We support their entire new age banking infrastructure applications. And one of the challenges they were facing before we started this project was that the advent of UPI, it just changed everything. The adoption of UPI changed the demand of their end customers. Now imagine yourself being a PSU bank and you have a UPI customer on the other end, and he's standing at a petrol pump, wants to pay his, or maybe anywhere, at a railway platform buying tickets or whatever, something for which he needs that immediate response and payment clearance and everything. So and not only this, I mean, your online banking things and other things in which the PSUs wanted to be at par with the private sector banks. So we are supporting their entire thing to kind of create this infrastructure which can cater to these kind of new age banking requirements, which in turn, because even if you look at the larger majority of India still banks with the PSU banks, right? So when we cater to our customers with something like this, it actually translates to being an end user service towards the entire citizens of the country. The second example of something similar that we're doing, which is not yet starting to impact, but it will very soon start impacting, is that we're working very closely across 5 or 6 states right now, and gradually it will be across all states, where we are trying to standardize the lending process of banks. Okay, so if you look at the payment process today, UPI is kind of standardized. There's equity. I mean, everybody from a street vendor to us, all of us use UPI, right? But on the lending side, it is not the case right now. So to give you an example, like if you look at a home loan or something, which probably we as people in the middle class would be aware of, it's a very easy to structure loan. The risk assessment is very easy. Finding documentation is very easy, and so on. Valuation is very easy. But when you move towards other loans, which the majority of the country wants, which is let's say agriculture-based loans, milk-based loans, cattle-based loans, or whatever, farm produce-based loans, and things like that, there is a lot of difficulty in collating information. Those land records are, I mean, they are being digitized on one end, but they're not readily available right now. You might need, on the other extreme, you might need satellite imagery, which will tell you that what is the quality of the yield of that piece of land, right? So those kind of things we are trying to collate, and we've created a standard layer where all of these inputs can plug in. Banks on the other side can just plug out information from there. and they have basically a credit enablement interface. The government has been talking about this for some time, and there are projects running, but we are also doing one of those projects. And that, I think, will be a huge benefit to the people of this country, because that will enable these loans that banks shy away from these days. So it's very easy for a bank to give a personal loan to a salaried person, or a home loan to, where you have securitized loans. But where you have, let us say, semi-securitization, you need to do some risk evaluation and things like that. Those kind of loans are the loans that will actually propel the masses of the country to have access to money, to grow their businesses, or to grow their net worth. And I think that is one of the things that you'll see very soon. You'll hear very soon about our participation in that.
So I think those kind of loans which you're talking about are the ones which benefit the people at the grassroots.
Absolutely, absolutely. And banks shy away from that. I'm not a banker, but I'll give you an example. Something that I heard from some of my friends. In banking, there is something known as a C to D ratio. So it's a credit to deposit ratio, and the credit to deposit ratio of smaller towns is very low. So explaining it in simple terms is that, let's say you have a very small town, let's say Muzaffarnagar, or maybe even smaller,
Any tier 3 city.
Bijnor or something, right? Okay. So the people of Bijnor are putting in money into the banks of Bijnor, okay, which is the deposit, okay, and then that money in the banks is then being given as loans, whether it could be a home loan, it could be a personal loan, it could be an agriculture loan, whatever, is being given as credit to some businessman in Bijnor. So that is the C to D ratio, or the credit to deposit ratio over there. Some of the towns in India, the credit C to D ratio is 25 to 30%. Okay, that means 70% of the money that the people of Bijnor are putting into the banks of Bijnor is actually coming into the headquarters of that bank and being given to people who need a loan in larger cities, bigger projects and all, just because the risk assessment of those projects is easier. The documentation of those products is easier. So once that increases, if they increase, so once you have, like I said, we're doing this across 6 to 7 states, because every state has a different land record system, every state has a different documentation system, taxation system, for buying land.
So can we say that unavailability of quality data leads to these kind of decisions by the banks?
Absolutely. So if you look at technology today, having data is the prerequisite to have all of these things.
True.
So data now is being digitized across. Had data not been digitized, the problem would have been twofold, right? You'd have to solve one problem completely separately. But now today you have digital records, which almost every department in the country is doing. And once the digitization of that happens, then you need to use that digitization in a meaningful way to help service providers provide service to the end customers. And that is where all this is happening, all these changes are happening.
Great. So these are some really interesting inputs and some new knowledge for me too. Moving ahead with my next question, when we talk about governance, or let's say effective governance, to be honest, which is driven by technology today, the citizen and the government interaction, that has to be seamless, that has to be streamlined, and that has to be easily accessible. So how do you think is Kyndryl, you guys are playing a role in enabling government to bridge that gap?
So how we can play the role would maybe be a more elaborative way to answer this, but what I'll do is I'll stick to another example of a live project that we're doing. And I think over here we can mention it because we've had a joint press release for that and all. We won the TaxNet 2.0 from CBDT as a consortium partner with Airtel. So what that project is about. So today, if you look at income tax filing, the way it happens, and all of us as income tax filing people know this, that sometimes you get your money back in like 1 week, or maybe even lesser. I've got mine in like 6-7 days, I was like, wow, like this is cool, and a lot of people who will be probably listening to this will vouch for that. Now, how does this happen? It happens because one is that you digitized everything, right? So you're doing e-filing of your IT returns. The second, what has happened is that it's a faceless assessment that is happening. So your information goes into the system, and then typically you could file it from city A, but your SSC officer can be anywhere. So that's like a faceless assessment which the government is doing. So there's an application behind which allows the officers to do that. And obviously, for this efficiency to be sustained by the income tax department, because today, to the last that I remember, almost 87-88% tax filing was online. So, and imagine the tax filing is growing in this country, right? We all read about that in your newspaper. So the officers sitting, they need to have access to this information, which could be for any faceless return filer from anywhere in the country, which goes to one central data center, right? So access to that central data center for all the officers across the country, and I'll tell you there are around 782 locations where these officers are present across the country. All states, hilly states, rainy states, dry states, desert states. So all of them have to access this information, and majority of it doesn't get filed uniformly over the year. It just get filed over the last 2 days or 3 days, right? So you can imagine the robustness of the network that is required for that. So we designed that network for them. We designed it at a very high availability architecture, and we maintain it for them. We keep our own spares, we stock our own spares. In fact, we even have taken the responsibility of the peripheral connectivity for those offices. It's a mega project for us, almost 8 years long. But yes, what it has enabled is that it has enabled these officers to seamlessly access information from the citizens and be able to service them back very, very quickly.
I think that's a really impressive case study which you shared, because you very rightly pointed out that all the filings, or let's say 90% of the filings, do not be is not being done throughout the year, but only in the last few days, when the deadline approaches. So the servers or the core data center would be taking a huge load of data which is flowing to and fro and day and night. So managing all of that with some robust network, I think that's a great job done. Also, secondly, you also mentioned one point I would like to underline, that this e-filing system which is in place, through which we can electronically file the tax returns, and it is a faceless process, so you physically are not required to that. That also adds up to the speedy returns, or let's say this is the speedy process of the this entire income tax cycle that runs. So I think that is that in itself is an testimony for how technology can literally transform the government processes and make it very easier for citizens.
Absolutely, absolutely, and there is no arm twisting possible now. Local arm twisting has been done away with.
Right.
So that's a boon. As a citizen, it's a boon.
Right, right. So I would like to now know about, see, we have seen, like you just mentioned, a few case studies in the previous deliberation also and here as well, that how Kyndryl and similarly other companies are partnering with the government or the public sector and working on multiple projects enabling technologies and innovations. But these ways we have seen lately in the past decade or so that a lot of government ministries as well as the public sector in itself, they are developing some in-house technologies. They are developing in-house tools, in-house softwares, and working on that, operating on that, shifting their data and their operations on those softwares. How do you think this trend, which has been growing in the past decade, this trend impacts the PPP models, the public-private partnership models, and the business of the companies which are collaborating with the governments and aiding them with their technology? And how has it been in your case?
So first of all, as IBM, when we were a part of IBM, and now as Kyndryl, I don't think PPP model was something that we were willing to kind of engage in. But the other part of what you said, I always believe that it's not about your shop that you need to think when you are in business. You have to think about the entire marketplace. And when the marketplace grows, the size of the pie grows. Okay, so it's actually a very welcome thing that the government is investing in each one of these things. So can any PSU who's building their in-house capability, or can they run the entire 9 yards on their own? No, so they would need people to support them. And but the fact that each one of them is doing something on the technology side is what is growing the piece of the size of the pie many folds from what it was earlier. So it is going to grow the business for everybody who's in the market. So you'll have smaller boutique players getting a lot of opportunities. You'll have mid-sized players getting a lot of opportunities, and you'll have tier one players like us getting a lot of opportunities. So personally, I think it is a good thing that is happening, because of that, the piece of the size of the pie has increased tremendously. So I think it's a good thing. I'm trying to think of an analogy to give to you, but and I can only think about this. If you look at these food courts, right? So usually food courts always succeed, as long as they're in a high footfall area. It doesn't matter if 3 out of the 10 restaurants make pathetic food, even those 3 will run, right? And if you're sure that you're not one of those restaurants that makes pathetic food, you will actually run more because the footfall increases, right? So that's what the thing about the marketplace is.
So that's actually a very interesting and amazing analogy, that it's not just about that one business, it's about the entire chunk of how many people are the target market and how many can serve them. And if the market grows, of course you all will get your share of the pie, and that's how the industry will also flourish further. It's a great answer. So it's been really wonderful talking with you till now, and I've learned a lot. I'm pretty sure our audience will also get a lot of insights. So now moving on with the last question of today's interview. I would like to know, what are your future plans ahead for the upcoming financial year, and if we are expecting any new launches from Kyndryl, any new project solutions coming up with, you can share if you
yeah, sure. So to kind of summarize, I mean, we like to call ourselves the youngest and the largest startup in the world. We are like close to 90,000 people worldwide, or close to 1/3 of that in India. The public sector, because we are a pure services company, business was not very big for us in the first couple of years of our existence. Today, it is significant for us. We have currently around 1,500 people, directly and indirectly, deployed across various government projects across the country, virtually in every state, close to 1,000 locations. By the end of this financial year, which is another 3 months, there is a high probability this 1,500 will touch almost 2,000 people. Our aim is, we are aiming to take it to 10,000 people in the next financial year. We are engaging very heavily on that. We are upscaling our team, both on the technical side as well as on the sales and customer engagement side. So yes, it's an exciting time for us. Our company believes that it's going to be the government and public sector which will actually catapult us into the next league from where we are. So about a couple of major announcements, like I told you, hopefully very soon you will hear about the standardization of the lending interface that I spoke about earlier. So hopefully you will hear about that very soon.
Perfect, sir. Thank you for sparing your time and sharing us all the
No,
insights.
it was a absolute pleasure being here, and thank you for inviting me.
Same here, pleasure for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.